Mayday, mayday, the sea's rising around us, compass is spinning, we can... They never finished that sentence. We live in a world where nothing surprises us anymore. We've mapped the human genome, walked on the moon, and built machines that think faster than we do. But one place still refuses to give up its secrets. A patch of ocean where ships and planes vanished without a plausible explanation. They call it the Bermuda Triangle. Or, if you want to be more dramatic, the Devil's Triangle. I didn't believe the myth surrounding it, but when I dug deeper, what I found gave me chills. Sometime after the 4th of March 1918, USS Cyclops, a ship the size of 2 football fields, disappeared. 306 sailors gone. No distress call, no wreck, nothing. At first I thought it was just another sailor's ghost story, but then I found some of the patterns we'll talk about soon. Jump ahead to 1964, an American journalist named Vincent Geddes sits down to write for Argosy magazine and ends up redrawing the map of modern mystery. He sketches 3 points: Miami, Bermuda, Puerto Rico. Then, with a few strokes of his pen, he creates a legend. Yes, Geddes was the one who called it the Bermuda Triangle. We've heard countless stories about what really happened, but let's start with the most haunting ones.
On January 31st, 1880, HMS Atalanta, a British Royal Navy training ship, sailed from Bermuda toward England and vanished without a trace, taking 281 souls with her. Once known as HMS Juno, she was a frigate launched in 1844, refitted decades later to train young sailors. Weeks later, the Atlantic grew violent. According to some accounts, between February 12th and 16th, 1880, a fierce storm raged across the shipping lanes between Bermuda and the Azores, right along Atalanta's likely route. Then came silence. No signal, no wreckage reached Britain. By April, with still no word, the Admiralty ordered ships to search. HMS Avon soon reported vast fields of floating debris near the Azores, spars, timbers, and wreckage from an unknown vessel. Many believed it was all that remained of Atalanta. No survivors were ever found. Speculation quickly turned to her design and her crew. She was reportedly tender, rolling dangerously up to 32 degrees, and burdened with too many trainees who were too afraid or too weak to climb the rigging and shorten sail during gales. Reports suggest that her crew was alarmingly inexperienced. Of roughly 281 aboard, only about a dozen were seasoned seamen. The rest were boys, some barely in their teens, making her a floating classroom on one of the roughest seas in winter. Some said one wrong gust could have capsized her entirely. Others blamed the Admiralty for sending a worn-out, aging wooden ship into the Atlantic, comparing the tragedy to the earlier loss of HMS Eurydice, another training ship sunk under similar conditions. For the families who waited in vain at Portsmouth, and for the 281 who never came home, it was catastrophe enough without any need for mystery. For decades, scientists, oceanographers, and even skeptical pilots have tried to figure out what's really happening inside the Bermuda Triangle. I found several common explanations for what science actually says. Let's dive into the first one. The triangle sits right where tropical storms and hurricanes are born. It's a place where the sky can change faster than your girlfriend's mood. One minute, blue skies. The next, lightning, roaring wind, and blackout darkness. For centuries, sailors have told stories of waterspouts spinning out of nowhere and rogue waves rising like walls. And science backs them up. Another giant out here that people often forget about, the Gulf Stream. This ocean current is a beast. It moves faster than most rivers and carries more water than all of them combined. So yes, the weather, the currents, and the raw power of the Atlantic can explain a lot. But even with all that, I still get the feeling that something or someone is tipping the scales now and then. because there are still worries where no storm ever showed up.
And to make sure you never lose direction or signal while traveling internationally, our partner eSIM.io is here to help and even give you a $5 bonus when you install their app. With coverage in more than 190 countries, eSIM.io delivers fast, reliable internet so you can stay connected with friends and loved ones. Whether you choose a 30-day, regional or pay-as-you-go plan, your connection stays consistently strong. The best part is how quick and simple it is to install and start using the eSIM.io app. It automatically connects to the strongest available network, whether you're in the United States or France, without any manual switching or new eSIM installs. You can top up your balance or purchase a discounted data package in advance, and any unused balance remains in your account for future trips. The app also lets you track your data usage in real time. To receive your $5 welcome gift, just use a link or a promo code in the description.
HMS Atalanta wasn't the only ship to vanish amid speculation and rumor. Just over 40 years later, another vessel would meet a mysterious fate. January 1921. A 5-masted schooner runs aground off the coast of North Carolina. At first glance, everything seems normal. But when the Coast Guard boards her, the scene freezes them in place. Food was prepared, but untouched. The captain's cabin, immaculate, maps neatly folded, a single window open to the sea breeze, but not a single soul on board. You know what else was missing? The logbook, and the lifeboats. And most eerie of all, the steering wheel had been torn clean from its post. This is the story of the Carol A. Deering, a merchant schooner fresh from delivering coal out of Rio de Janeiro. According to the records, the Deering left Rio in early December 1920. Her final sighting came weeks later, on January 28, 1921. A lightship keeper, Captain Jacobson, reported an unsettling encounter. A man, not the captain, hailed the light ship, saying they had lost their anchors. The crew stood strangely on deck, no officer in sight. Captain Warmel was never seen that day or ever again. 2 days later, January 31st, the Deering was found wrecked on the infamous Diamond Shoals, the graveyard of the Atlantic. Her entire crew had gone missing. 11 men, gone without a trace. Does this fall neatly into the triangle pattern? Not quite. The wreck itself occurred outside the Bermuda Triangle proper. However, some sources say that the voyage would have taken the ship through the triangle before its final fate. That's why it is one of those eerie cases that keep the legend alive.
The mystery stirred deep suspicion and even panic among sailors and coastal towns. The investigation into the Carol A. Deering dragged on for months. The US Coast Guard took the lead and other agencies were involved. Theories ranged broadly: mutiny, piracy, hurricanes, and even sabotage. In the end, the government listed the case as unresolved. And as you'll soon see, that ambiguous case unknown label has become a familiar refrain in many of the stories tied to the Bermuda Triangle. Just when it seemed the mystery could only get darker, another theory surfaced. One that replaces ghost with something far more ordinary: us. Many skeptics believe that most of the triangle's incidents can be explained by simple human error, especially given how rudimentary navigation tools were in the early 20th century. Pilots and captains relied on compasses, paper charts, and variable radio signals. One wrong bearing, a missed message, or just a few degrees off course could turn a routine voyage into disaster. But with all respect to those theories, I believe in facts. And when I look at the records, experienced pilots, seasoned captains, I'm not ready to attribute everything solely to human error. However, every time I try to dismiss the mystery, another story pulls me back in, one that apparently defies logic and weather.
On October 22, 1944, the U.S. Coast Guard came across a cargo ship, the Rubicon, drifting silently off the coast of Florida, on the western edge of the Bermuda Triangle. The crew? Gone. The only soul left on board was a dog. The Rubicon was en route from Cuba to the United States, with about 50 crew members according to reports. A Navy patrol blimp was the first to spot her. When the Coast Guard boarded, they found the ship in perfect condition, except for the missing lifeboats and a snapped tow line. Records indicate the crew was presumed lost at sea, but no one has ever explained how an entire crew could disappear from a fully functioning ship without a trail. Honestly, I don't know how that's even possible. This mystery would have been a whole lot easier to solve if the dog could talk. Whatever happened out there, something unseen was at play. Some believe it was the Earth's invisible pole. In some parts of the Bermuda Triangle, the Earth's magnetic field shifts slightly, and that can mess with compasses. Historically, the agonic line, where magnetic and true north align, has drifted right across this region. When navigators didn't account for magnetic declination, minor errors could grow into massive course deviations. Remember Christopher Columbus? He was among the first to report strange behavior in his compass while sailing through this region in 1492. And maybe he was onto something, because ever since then, pilots and sailors have reported needles spinning or drifting off true north, even when everything around them seemed calm and ordinary.
Just when you think you've found the answer, or at least something that makes sense, along comes the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the US Coast Guard, confirming there's no permanent magnetic anomaly here. But the ocean wasn't done with its secrets, it simply changed its stage. If you've been thinking that only ships vanish in the Devil's Triangle, you'd be wrong. The following story surpasses all the previous ones. The truth is, this is one of the most unexplained disappearances ever recorded.
At 2:10 p.m. on December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off from the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for what was supposed to be a routine overwater training mission called Navigation Problem Number 1. The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, was no rookie and had already completed a combat tour in the Pacific during World War II. His crew of 13 airmen, including trainee pilots, was to fly a triangular route, east to Hen and Chickens Shoals for low-level bombing practice, then north over the Bahamas, and finally sweep southwest back toward Florida. Around 2:30 p.m., the planes dropped their practice bombs right on schedule. Soon after, one pilot reported dropping his final bomb. Nothing unusual, just a routine training mission, right? That's what I thought too. But listen to what happened next. Around 4 p.m., radio transmissions took a strange turn. Operators intercepted a confused conversation.
I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn.
Lieutenant Taylor replied,
Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale.
In reality, they weren't over the Florida Keys at all. They were flying somewhere north of the Bahamas, far off course. At the base, controllers urged Taylor to switch to the search and rescue frequency and activate his YG transmitter so they could triangulate his position. For reasons no one can explain, he never responded. By the time the sun set, the weather had deteriorated and visibility was close to zero. At 6:20 p.m., the last transmission came through.
All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together.
Then, silence. All 14 airmen of Flight 19 were erased from the sky. The Navy launched a massive search that same evening. 2 PBM Mariner rescue planes joined the effort. One of them, PBM-5 Bureau number 59225, carrying 13 crewmen, radioed a routine message after takeoff from Banana River, Florida at 7:27 p.m. 20 minutes later, it disappeared too. A nearby merchant ship reported seeing a burst of flame and later passed through an oil slick in the same area. In the next 5 days, the Navy searched 300,000 square miles of ocean. No debris from Flight 19 or the missing PBM was ever recovered. Even so, the loss of 6 aircraft and 27 men in a single evening remains one of the most haunting events in aviation history, and a cornerstone of the Bermuda Triangle legend. The Navy tried to calm the frenzy, but its own reports contradicted one another. Some said Lieutenant Taylor had simply gotten lost, others blamed the compasses, and some were convinced it was something else, magnetic storms or forces no one could or maybe wanted to name. Unable to agree on what happened in the air, investigators turned their attention to the water and what might be lurking beneath its calm surface. Some researchers have proposed that methane hydrates, frozen gas trapped beneath the sea floor, could, if suddenly released, reduce seawater density and cause a ship to lose buoyancy, sinking almost instantly. In laboratory experiments, scientists have shown that large bursts of gas can make water so frothy that even heavy objects can't stay afloat. However, no shipwreck in the Bermuda Triangle has ever been confirmed to result from this cause. It remains a fascinating hypothesis, one that sits right on the edge between science and mystery.
You may wonder, what about those who didn't face a storm? Well, I've got a logical explanation for that too. Sometimes you don't even need a storm. Beneath the triangle, the seafloor drops like an elevator shaft. The Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest point in the Atlantic, plunges nearly 27,000 feet. Modern NOAA multi-beam sonar expeditions have filled in those blank spaces on the map, revealing submarine canyons, gas seeps, and even deep whale highways across the ton of the ocean, where depths range from 3,600 to 6,600 feet. So when people ask, why does nobody ever find the wreckage? This is why. If a plane or ship sinks there, it can end up in places almost impossible to reach or even detect. It's not magic, it's physics. Gravity and depth do what legends don't have to. But what happens when the sky starts acting the same as the ocean, swallowing things and making them disappear? The following story became a streak of bad luck for one airline. The kind you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. In fact, they didn't just get unlucky once. They managed to do it twice in almost the exact same patch of sky.
In the late 1940s, 2 British passenger planes vanished near Bermuda, and to this day, not a single trace of either has ever been found. The Avro Tudor IV Star Tiger, operated by British South American Airways, or BSAA, departed Santa Maria Azores for Bermuda on January 30, 1948. 25 people were on board. Strong winds and heavy clouds forced the plane to fly unusually low, about 2,000 feet, likely to avoid turbulence. At 3:15 a.m., the pilot reported their position, but the plane never arrived. 1 year later, in 1949, BSAA lost another aircraft, but this time under perfect flying conditions. On January 17th, Captain John Clutha McPhee took off from Kinley Field, Bermuda, in Avro Tudor 4B, named Star Ariel. The skies were clear, with excellent visibility. 20 people were aboard, 7 crew and 13 passengers, bound for Kingston, Jamaica. An hour after takeoff, McPhee radioed a calm, routine message.
I'm flying in good visibility at 18,000 feet. I was over 30 degrees north at 9:37. I'm changing frequency to Kingston.
It was the last transmission ever received. When the Star Ariel failed to arrive, a massive search was launched. U.S. Navy and RAF units scoured more than 1 million square miles of ocean. But no wreckage, no oil slick. And how did the official British inquiry close the case? Once again, with a familiar pattern. Through lack of evidence, due to no wreckage having been found, the cause of the accident is unknown. Later theories blamed a catastrophic fire, equipment failure, or even sabotage, but none were ever proven to be true. We've talked about the disappearances. We've tried to explain them. Storms, magnetic fields, human error, even physics. But now, just for a moment, forget logic. Seriously, come on, we're human. We want to believe there's something more out there. What if the triangle is actually under non-human surveillance? The US Air Force even looked into strange lights over this region. Back in the 1950s and 60s, Project Blue Book logged several reports from the Western Atlantic, not exactly inside the triangle, but close enough to keep you wondering. Coincidence? Maybe. But honestly, I'm starting to think someone out there owes Fox Mulder from The X-Files an apology. By the way, do you know Bruce Gernon? He co-authored a book in which he claimed he flew through a swirling electronic fog and somehow ended up more than 100 miles ahead in just a few minutes. Stories like that are what fuel the wildest theories. Tales of time warps, portals, and energy clouds that twist the very rules of space and time. There's no solid scientific proof that any of this is real, but the stories keep coming back in books, documentaries, and those late-night talk shows. Maybe that's why every decade brings a new mystery. Another ship, another plane, another cruise swallowed by the unknown. And just when you think it's all in the past, something happens again. Let's keep moving to another famous story. That's if you've ever Googled anything about the Bermuda Triangle. And if not, well, I'm here to tell you about the mysterious disappearance of October 2015. The American cargo ship El Faro departed Jacksonville, Florida, bound for Puerto Rico. 33 experienced crew members were aboard on what was supposed to be a routine voyage. But far out in the Atlantic, a storm was brewing, Hurricane Joaquin. Captain Michael Davidson received repeated weather updates showing the storm strengthening and shifting north. Confident in his experience, he believed he could skirt its edge before it grew too dangerous, so he stayed on course. Within hours, Joaquin intensified into a Category 3 hurricane, with winds over 120 miles per hour and waves towering more than 40 feet high. At 7 a.m. on October 1st, Davidson made his final report.
We've lost propulsion. The ship lists heavily, and water is coming in.
Moments later, all contact with El Faro was lost. The U.S. Coast Guard launched one of the largest search operations in modern history. They found debris, damaged lifeboats, and empty survival suits, but no bodies. Weeks later, undersea drones discovered the wreck, upright and intact, resting on the ocean floor nearly 15,000 feet deep. The ship's voyage data recorder was later recovered, capturing 26 hours of bridge audio that revealed the crew's final struggle. As systems failed and water poured in, the captain and crew fought to correct their course. In the final minutes, a panicked helmsman pleaded,
Help me!
The National Transportation Safety Board determined that human error, outdated weather data, and the sheer force of the storm were the causes of the disaster. Still, the official findings leave behind essential questions. Why didn't the captain alter course? And why did the ship sink in the same waters where so many others have lost before? The unanswered questions about El Faro pushed me to look further, and what I found led me straight into one of the most controversial theories about the Bermuda Triangle. For some believers, it could be the final resting place of Atlantis. The idea exploded in the 1960s, after divers near Bimini Island in the Bahamas claimed to have found massive stone blocks on the seabed, a formation resembling an ancient road. They called it the Bimini Road, and writers quickly connected it to Atlantis, suggesting it was part of a lost advanced civilization swallowed by the sea. Scientists later studied the site and concluded it's made of natural limestone, shaped over thousands of years by tides and erosion, not man-made ruins. Still, the legend stuck.
Even nowadays, the Bermuda Triangle continues to blend fact and fantasy, transforming science into a story and story into myth. Despite the myths, thousands of planes and ships travel safely through it every year. Insurance companies don't charge extra for ships passing through the area. The triangle remains one of the most studied maritime anomalies in the world. So, from what we've seen today, many, if not all, of the Bermuda Triangle's cases can be explained logically and scientifically. If you love chasing legends and uncovering strange truth, don't stop here. Check out our other videos exploring the world's greatest enigmas, from lost cities to eerie underground ruins.